Hi, I'm Russ Hornstein. This is my lap. You can't see me in this picture, but I just want to take a few minutes and show you a little bit about how the neck works. I had a request from a colleague to explain how my adjusting is different than normal diversified adjusting. So I'm just going to show it a little bit with this spine, and then I'll show you a little bit of hands-on with a little model here. Basically, what we're always trying to do is we're always trying to get the spine into the normal neutral position, which this is a little bit difficult with this model, but we want to see obviously some extension in here, and we want to see everything balanced from left to right. When there's a problem in the spine, we're going to see that there's one joint which is sort of bent off to the side, and we can feel that when we're palpating the spine. Now, normally what we're doing is, when we're adjusting with diversified, we're doing palpation where we're bending the head way to the side and then seeing where there's more resistance to each side. So that's a little bit the opposite of what I'm trying to achieve here, because what I'm suggesting with adjusting to neutral is that really what the challenge is of in the muscular system here around the neck is of the joint to just simply be able to return back to a neutral position. So the way that I would palpate would be rather to, if the joint was bent to the side, I let the neck go to one side and I see where I feel resistance to come back to neutral. Okay, so that's a key component. I might take the neck to the right or to the left, and I palpate on each side and see where I feel resistance. Obviously, palpating an extension. Very often we have necks that are too straight, so if there's a resistance of the joint to come back into extension, then that's another component we need to bring into the adjustment. So let me just explain the difference between different types of adjusting. In normal diversified adjusting, what we're doing is we're going to laterally flex the neck, in this example, say to the left, and then what you do is you rotate the head quite a bit to the right, and also the neck is in flexion. So you bring the neck into flexion, then it's never like having it in extension when you're doing diversified. But anyway, what they're doing is bringing it into flexion like this, left lateral flexion, and right rotation. And what that's going to do is in the facet joints, it's going to open the facet joints. So the facet joint on this side is very, very open, and on the other side is very, very compressed. So that is the end range of the joint. It doesn't like moving further than that. There are ligaments which are preventing this joint from going further than this. And every time that we're adjusting, we are putting pressure and stress on these zygapophyseal joints here. So, and the ligaments that are supporting them. So, I don't like adjusting at the end range. Now, another step along from that is coupled motion adjusting, which I've done for many, many years, and I really, really like. And what we're doing in coupled motion is we're paying attention to the way that the zygapophyseal joints are at an angle. So the zygapophyseal joints are at an angle like this. So they like when you bend the head to the side, so say you bend the head to the left side here, the joint should rotate to the left, and that keeps the zygapophyseal joints in approximation to each other. So they stay together, there's no gapping. When you do that, there's not anything jamming on this side, and there's not anything gapping on that side. So that's a left lateral flexion and a left rotation. You don't get that gapping, okay? And this is the normal mechanics of the joint. So left rotation and left lateral flexion go together, as do right and right. So it makes sense to be adjusting that way. But coupled motion reduction does take the joint to the end range. And what I'm suggesting is that we find where the restriction is and we adjust the joint back to a neutral position. So I'm just going to take a few minutes and explain on this extremely basic model, which is a pool toy, how the differences in the adjustments work. So there's a black line there, I hope that shows up on the camera. If we call this anterior, what we'd be doing with diversified adjusting is you take the joint into left lateral flexion and right rotation, okay? And then you're adjusting at that end range and bringing it further past that with the rotation in the adjustment. With a coupled motion adjustment, what you'd be doing is taking the joint into left lateral flexion and left rotation, which is a coupled motion. That's the way the joint is meant to work. But we're still doing the adjustment at the end range of the joint. So we are going to that end range and pushing a bit further. Okay. what I'm doing in my adjusting is that if I find a joint which is off to the right, so in other words, what we're doing in all these adjustments is trying to release the tension on the right side of the neck. So in my adjusting through the palpation, I would find that I would have the joint, if I bend the joint to the right, I would feel resistance coming back to neutral. And rather than bringing it all the way past neutral and at the end range and then adjusting into left rotation, left lateral flexion, what we're going to be doing is taking the joint into right lateral flexion, right rotation, and then taking the contact from here. And so what I'm doing is I'm on the underside of the neck and pressing up. So these two fingers are really, really important to bring that neck into lateral flexion. I take the head into rotation and then come in here like this with my thumb, and the adjustment is bringing it back to a neutral position. So you can see here that this is the beginning of the adjustment, that's the end of the adjustment, and the joint finishes at a neutral position. It is possible, I can promise you, and it works extremely well. So I hope that answers a few people's questions about how this works, and obviously you probably have more questions, so just pass those along to me. I can demonstrate on a real person, but the problem is you can't really see what's happening with the fingers here, so that the crucial element is that you're bringing that joint to the side, and when you're taking that motion out, you're not really going into left lateral flexion or left rotation, but what you're doing is just getting this set up just right so that when you adjust, you're bringing it back to a neutral position. But it's sort of similar in a sense, but we're finishing at neutral. Okay, but the key is rather than starting here and coming over, we're pressing up and then coming down and in like that. Okay, so it's just a straight line drive towards the neutral position. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Thanks for watching.